Hey everyone, it's Adaptive Goddess, and today I'm going to be talking about what emotions do in our body and how we can regulate those emotions. First up is anger, and this is when you are really mad at something or something's kind of out of your control and you want control over it. You get tight muscles, you get a flushed face or a flushed feeling, your heart rate goes up, and you kind of have the thought of wanting to hurt someone. Next is disgust, and this is when you kind of are like with something that you don't like, whether it's Brussels sprouts or broccoli, or you're in a situation that you don't really like. So this would invoke feelings of like sick or nauseous in your stomach. You feel really unclean. Like when you're done with the situation, like you want to go take a shower or a bath, like get clean. And then you also have the urge to run away. Next is fear, and this is when you are put into a scary situation or your body or mind thinks that you're in a very scary situation. You get the feeling of breathlessness, like you can't really breathe. You have a really fast heart rate, and you get fight, flight, or freeze syndrome. So that is when you either want to fight something, you flight, which is you run away from it, or freeze, where you are actually unable to move. Next is sad, and this is when you have a very tragic or heartbreaking situation happen in your life. You feel like you need to cry, you feel tired, or you feel run down. Then there is happy, and I know this is not a negative emotion that I talk about a lot. It's not even a negative emotion, but it's good to know what happy feels like in your body so that you know when you are in that state, so that if this is your baseline, you know when you have gone through a de-escalation, what you kind of return to. So in happy, you feel calm, you feel energetic, and you are laughing. Then there is envy, and that is when you are kind of upset at someone else's good fortune. And this is when your muscles get tight, you feel the urge to get even or revenge. And you also just are unhappy when someone else has something good happen to them. Next is jealousy, and I know that's very similar to envy, but like envy is that person doesn't really have a lot of control over what's happening to them. That makes you kind of envious of their situation, whereas jealous is you're kind of jealous of things that they have, such as like money or a house or a car, things that that other person like can control or you can earn too, whereas envy are things that are outside of your own control. So in jealousy, you feel helpless, you get kind of a lump in your throat, and your muscles are tense or tight. Then there is shame, and shame is when you kind of are told something's wrong with you, or you are kind of just very ashamed and very like self-conscious of who you are. And shame, you feel like you want to sink into the wall or disappear. You get a pain in the pit of your stomach, and you've also kind of want to just like hide away, not talk to anybody. Lastly, there's guilt, and I know guilt and shame are also very, very similar, but guilt is something that you kind of feel when you're the reason something bad happened or could have happened, whereas shame is you really don't have a lot of control over what's going on. So like, for example, you would feel guilt if you're playing with your brother and the ball rolls into the street and you told your brother to go get it and he almost gets hit by a car. That would be the feeling of guilt. Whereas shame is if you have like a stimming behavior or a vocal tic that people then tease you for. That feeling you would feel being teased is shame. And so in guilt, you kind of get jitteriness, you get a red face, or it's very warm, and you also feel like you can't breathe, so it feels like you're suffocating. So those are the main emotions that our body will feel. Of course, there are many, many more, but they all can kind of stem from these emotions. And so in the description down below, I will have a emotions wheel that kind of shows how all of the emotions are kind of connected to each other and to the main 6 emotions in the human body. So now I'm going to be talking about the main steps on how to regulate your emotions. I will have videos that kind of expand on quite a few of these topics because they are very lengthy and can get kind of complicated. So what you first want to do in emotional regulation is to reduce your emotional vulnerability. And that does not mean you put up a wall and you don't let anyone in and you kind of keep to yourself. What it means is that you can articulate your emotion, you accumulate positive emotions and can articulate them. You build mastery of skills. You cope ahead of time. So if you know something that causes you a lot of anxiety is going to happen, or something that is really sad is going to happen, and you know you cannot cope with these really big feelings, what you do is you actually mitigate them ahead of time so that you're not going in with such a huge reaction. You go in with a lesser reaction. And then you use something called please skills. And this is something I am going to have a video on because it's a little bit complicated to put into a 2-phrase kind of sentence. But what please stands for is treat your physical illnesses, balance eating, avoid mood-altering substances, balance sleep, and get exercise. And in the video on please, I'll show how that all relates to please because it's a little complicated. After you reduce your emotional vulnerability, what you are going to do is you are going to change your emotional interpretation. So an event happened. You now have the choice of whether or not you respond in a large emotional reaction or in a smaller emotional reaction, and how you actually emotionally interpret that event is going to dictate how you're going to feel about that event. And so to change your emotional interpretation, you're going to use the skill called check the facts. And that is when you look at your thoughts about the situation and actually compare them to the real situation you are experiencing. So you walk into lunch or you walk into the break room and there are people looking at you and then they whisper. Your thoughts could be, oh my gosh, they're talking about me, which can lead to things of jealousy, shame, guilt, envy, all of that stuff. When really they're acknowledging that you entered the room and are now going back to their conversation. So I will also have a video on check the facts because it gets very broad and there are some certain skills you can do to check the facts. Next is you reduce your emotional prompting event. So in that wave that we were talking about, you have the triggering event, you have your emotional interpretation, and then you have kind of your emotional response to that prompting event, which is kind of at that crest of the wave. So we're going to chop that crest of the wave off by reducing our emotional prompting event. And this is when you are still calm and you are able to problem solve. Again, I will have a video on this because there are some concrete examples of how to actually do this. Next, you change your extreme emotional reaction. So that is up there again in the crest of the wave, or that is in the escalation cycle. That is when you're getting to the peak. And you do this by mindfully, you are very mindful and mindfully aware of the emotion. And you also use your distress tolerance skills. Next is you change your emotional reaction. So this is one that I will definitely have a video on for one specific part of this. But you use the skill called all the way. And this is when you drastically, radically change your emotional response. And so what that means is opposite action, opposite body language, opposite words, and opposite thoughts. I will have a video on opposite action because that is the hardest one to kind of comprehend and understand. And once you understand that one, you really understand the rest of what's going on in this step. But what opposite body language kind of means is that if you're mad, you have a certain way that you non-verbally show that you're mad. And if you don't know what that is, I suggest you go to a mirror and you make a mad face. And if you can't, I want you to like YouTube things that make you mad and look at your reaction in the mirror. And then what I want you to do is when you know that reaction in that body language, what you are going to do is you're going to oppositely. So if it's mad, it's happy. Pretty much the opposite of every other emotion is happy or calm. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a calm body language. So like for me, I'm like, as mad. What you're going to do is what I need to do is I need to soften everything up and show that I am calm. No matter what the situation is, if you show a calm demeanor, your body actually believes that it's calm, even if it's not. For opposite words, what you would say instead of like, I really hate you, you made me mess up on my picture. You would say things like, oh, I'm like really hurt that my picture got destroyed. Is there another way we can be in the same room together? See how those two different words actually breed two different outcomes. And then opposite thoughts is kind of that automatic negative thought versus the positive evidence-based thoughts. So thinking everyone hates me because they're whispering about me to they acknowledged my presence in the room and went back to their conversation. Those two thoughts would breed different emotions. And lastly, what you are going to do is name your emotion. And you are going to observe and describe this emotion, which is why it is so important to know what the emotion looks like to you and for you and what feelings that conjure in the body. And so whether that means you watch YouTube videos that will make you angry or disgusted or scared or happy or sad or envious or shame or guilt or jealous, those are really important to then look in a mirror, watch those YouTube videos and see what it does to your body. Not just outwardly, but inwardly as well. There are some side notes. And so the side note is you want to manage the after effect of emotional regulation. And that means that you kind of are aware of secondary emotions. So if you are in a wave cycle, which I talk about in my previous videos, if you're in an anger wave cycle, a secondary emotion that comes out of that could be shame. You're so ashamed that you got angry, which is why things like non-judgmental stance are so important. Also, with management of side effects and after effects is distress tolerance skills, which is why distress tolerance is taught before emotional regulation. So that way, when you get into managing your emotions, you have skills that help you mitigate your emotional response. Leave a comment down below. What is your most common emotion to feel on any given day? When I was younger, that would definitely have been like fear and anxiety. Now that I'm older and I've done a lot of DBT, I have to say it's more like happy and calm. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and gently tap that like button. And remember to be kind, compassionate, and true to you.